Section 1. You will hear a woman called Tanya talking to her friend called Simon, who lives abroad. Tanya is planning to visit Simon. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 4. Now we shall begin. You should answer the questions as you listen, because you will not hear the recording a second time. Listen carefully and answer questions 1 to 4.
Hello?
Hi, is that Tanya?
Yes, Simon. Lovely to hear you. How are you?
Very well, and we're so looking forward to seeing you.
So am I.
Now, I don't have a lot of time, I'm afraid, so I wanted to make sure we've got all your details. Have you confirmed your flights?
Yes, I'm definitely coming on the 22nd of June.
Excellent. Have you got your flight number?
Not with me, I'm afraid, but I promise I'll email it. Let me make a note of all this.
Yes, do, because one of us will try to come and collect you from the airport if we can. I presume you'll be coming into Terminal 1?
I don't know. I'll have to find out which one it is.
Yes, you must. We don't want to be waiting at the wrong one.
But hang on, I'll be arriving at about lunchtime, and that'll mean you have to take time off work to pick me up. You really mustn't do that.
Look, we're not all that busy at work, and if there's a problem, I can text you when you arrive, and you can take a taxi.
Okay.
There's a really good company called Pantera.
Can you spell that?
It's Pantera. They have a stand at the airport. You can't miss it, and they're really reliable.
Great, thanks. How far are you from the airport?
About 40 minutes.
And you're near the city centre, aren't you?
We're east of it, actually. Don't tell the driver city centre because you'll really get caught up in traffic.
Okay, and I'll make sure I carry your address with me. Now, have you got my mobile, cell phone number?
Yes, you sent it last month.
But I tell you what, I don't think I've got yours. I'd better have it now, just in case.
Okay, and I changed it recently anyway. Ready? It's 07765 328 411.
Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 5 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 5 to 10.
Thanks. Now, what should I pack?
Well, all the usual, casual clothes mainly. Though you'd better bring an evening dress. We'll be having at least one fancy dinner in a hotel restaurant. Okay, now, when you're coming, unfortunately the weather is not going to be brilliant.
I know, it's the rainy season. I'm bringing an umbrella.
We have tons of those, so don't pack one. But pack a raincoat, a good one, because we'll try and get out for plenty of hikes.
Okay, sure. Sounds super. Just what I love. And I'd better remember to pack my sturdy walking shoes.
Excellent idea. It's pretty rugged round here, so they have to be tough.
I can imagine. I'm so looking forward to getting out. Oh, Simon, before I forget, you recommended I read a book about your area.
Yeah.
What was the name again? I'd like to read it, to get an idea of the history, etc.
It's called Mountain Lives, and it's...
Hang on, I'm just writing it down. Okay?
And it's by Rex Campbell.
Great. I'll try and get hold of that.
Well worth it.
Now, the really important things are gifts.
Oh, don't worry about that. Just bring yourself.
I know, but I'd like to get something for your parents. What about Janice? I know she loves English tea.
Oh, that's very kind, but she's not drinking so much of that these days. But she'd love some chocolate. You know her favorite.
Oh, yes, that'd be nice. I'll do that. And Alec, is he still into racing?
Very much so.
I was thinking of bringing a calendar, you know, with horse racing pictures.
What a good idea. He'd love that.
Great. So that's about it, I think.
Yes, I think so. So you'll send me your number again?
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to Part 2. Part 2.
You will hear a talk about the history of a poetry award. You have 30 seconds to look at questions 11 to 15.
Now listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
Hello everyone, and welcome to this year's award ceremony for the Antonia Watson Memorial Poetry Award. As with previous years, the competition has been particularly fierce and we received numerous excellent entries, so it's an incredible achievement for our 3 finalists who are sitting here amongst you, and we should congratulate them all. However, as with every competition, there can unfortunately only be one winner, and we will be announcing them shortly. Before we do, though, a few words about the award itself. As most of you know, the Antonia Watson Memorial Poetry Award has been presented annually since 2010 and was presented biannually for 2 more competitions prior, once in 2008 and once in 2006. It is entirely funded by Antonia Watson's very generous parents, who offer £1,500 to the author of the best poem on a topic announced at each previous award ceremony, as well as £500 to the first runner-up and £250 to the second, bringing the total up to £2,250. Now, a few words on Antonia Watson herself, without whom none of us would be standing here today. I briefly knew Antonia while at university, where we were flatmates for a year, and I'm afraid that any speech I give will not be able to do her justice, as she was the kindest, sweetest person I've ever met. Thankfully, this part of my speech was written with the assistance of one of her siblings, Thomas Watson, who was not only her brother, but also her best friend. Antonia was born in Slayford, Lincolnshire, in December 1986. From a very young age, she displayed an inquisitive and creative nature, matched in volume only by the gentle kindness of her spirit. She wrote her first poem, named Love Barks, about the death of her dog at the age of 10. This was also her first poem to be published at her school's newspaper, just 2 months after another of her poems, Be Kind, won the 1996 Triad Children's Writing Competition and was published in the competition's anthology. While her early forays into poetry were crowned with impressive success, Antonia unfortunately ceased to write for a few years following the death of her very dear grandfather, Peter William Watson, in 1999.
You now have 30 seconds to look at questions 16 to 20.
Now listen carefully and answer questions 16 to 20.
While her early forays into poetry were crowned with impressive success, Antonia unfortunately ceased to write for a few years following the death of her very dear grandfather, Peter William Watson, in 1999. Despite her writer's block, however, her artistic nature didn't lie dormant during the next 4 years. She had an active role in various theatre plays, and she also ventured into painting. A few of the plays are available on the internet, and you can find several of her self-portraits on our website, and you can see for yourself how impressive they are. But poetry, of course, remained her passion even then, which is why in 2003 she resumed writing, and her next poem, The War on Both Sides, was published in her college's journal. At the age of 18, Antonia moved to Sheffield to study English literature at the University of Sheffield. This is where she and I met, spending a whole year in adjacent rooms in a flat in central Sheffield. This is also where I met her good-natured, generous parents, Mr. and Mrs. Watson, who came to visit her regularly and always treated me like a daughter as well. Antonia and I grew very close during that period, and while we ran in different circles, we always found time for each other every week. Antonia self-published one collection of poems in August 2005. It was named Burning Stars, after the poem on page 16, which is also the date of her birthday. It was an immediate success amongst her peers at the University of Sheffield, and it was so cherished by her English literature classmates specifically that it had attracted the attention of one of her lecturers, who put her in touch with a literary agent. She had been due to begin working on her second collection right before her tragic passing in a car accident just 5 days before her 19th birthday in December 2005. Antonia was always interested in societal shifts and how they affect humanity as well as the environment, and this award was designed to reflect her faith that regardless of what we do, we are all inherently good. With this in mind, all of the topics this competition has dealt with have been about the potential and the positive side of humanity, such as this year's Young Love theme or last year's Inner Power theme. We've had poems about personal strength, about immigration, about gender equality and peaceful protest. And hopefully in 12 months, the poems we'll be awarding will be just as inspiring with the topic of poverty. I know Antonia would be really proud of what her parents and what all of you together have achieved. So, finally, let's get on with the actual award. As I said before, it's been a fierce competition this year, and with more than 5,000 entries, it was quite the task for our 3 judges to cut them down to just 3. But our 3 finalists definitely deserve to be here, and without further ado, I would like to...
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Section 3. You will hear 2 students, Ramil and Kirsten, discussing presenting a paper at an architecture conference. You now have 30 seconds to read questions 21 to 28.
Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 28.
Hi, Kirsten. Have you heard about that architecture conference in Oxford at the end of the year?
Yeah, I saw the leaflet on the notice board. As it's my final year, I ought to try giving a paper. but I've got no idea how to go about it.
Oh, I think you should go for it. I did one last year. It's quite straightforward. First of all, you need to see what the conference themes are. You know, what topics they are covering. You can do that by looking it up on the website. You need to submit a paper that falls into one of the categories they give you.
Oh, that may give me some ideas.
Then, while you're doing that, you should also have a look at the information on how to submit your paper. The rules, if you like, such as the length. It's important you follow those.
I see. And then I suppose the next stage is to start writing it up. I'd like to use it as an opportunity to propose some future work, but I understand it must be based on current work. Still, there's plenty to choose from. It makes sense to do something that I'm more familiar with.
Yes, and the other thing is, when you've written it up, then go back and look at your data carefully and make certain that you've presented it in a format that is standard for your subject. Remember, people have to absorb information very quickly while they're listening. Don't make it too complicated.
Okay, well, I reckon that'll take me about a month to get that sorted. Then the next thing I have to do, I guess, before I send it off to the conference organizer, is give the whole thing to the events officer so that he can look through it and see if it all makes sense and is okay.
Yeah. Remember to warn him that it's en route so he can fit it into his schedule.
Oh.
Then you're done, really. All you have to do after that is to go through it and sort out any changes you need to make. Then finally, you can submit it. You can do that online.
Phew, good. Then I just wait to hear, I suppose. How long does that take?
It depends, but usually about 6 weeks.
Oh.
When you hear if your paper has been accepted, then at that stage, it's worth giving them a list of any technical things you need when you actually give the talk. A screen or video players or that sort of thing.
Okay, but that's a long way off. And I know that if my paper is accepted, then at that stage, I have to give them a short text about myself and my academic background so that they can put it in the brochure. Famous at last.
Yeah.
First, you have some time to look at questions 29 to 30. Now listen carefully and answer questions 29 to 30.
Right, well, I've got to get a couple of things sorted if I'm going to get this paper completed.
Have you got enough data?
Possibly. I'd like to reinforce some of it, though, so I thought I'd send out some more questionnaires. I was looking at that thesis that Angela wrote last year, and she said you need a sample of over 100 to be sure of your results.
I think some of this year's postgraduates are doing some of the same stuff as you on buildings. Why don't you talk to them?
I'll end up getting confused. It would be more useful for me to actually go out to that site by the rail bridge to see how they're building the new factory.
Oh.
I managed to get hold of Professor Barnett at London University, and he said I should go out and take pictures. I'm pretty busy, but I'll have to make time. Anyway, what about you? What are your plans?
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
You'll hear a talk given by a foreign correspondent.
First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
Good evening. As I assume most of you are already aware, I have been asked to come here and talk to you, essentially give you a quick overview of the life of a foreign correspondent, along with a few tips on how to become a successful international reporter yourself, should this be a career choice you elect to pursue. So let me start by this. Don't become a foreign correspondent, at least not due to the romantic notions that come attached to this job, or what you've seen in the movies. Being a foreign correspondent does not mean exotic adventures. It doesn't mean finding yourself at the heart of the action and putting yourself in danger to inform the world. Let me just tell you this. 80 journalists are killed each year in the line of duty. Many more find themselves in prison or are attacked. You need to think hard. Is this the sort of career I want? Is this the kind of reporting I'm interested in? And only after you've carefully considered all the pros and cons should you decide. But let's focus on those of you who believe that, yes, you've got what it takes to be a foreign correspondent, and this is definitely why you decided to study journalism here. You're all third-year students, which means I don't need to waste my time telling you the basics. Of course, you need to read a lot. Books, novels, newspapers, blogs, and of course you need to be acceptably proficient in various media skills. But what is it that's going to separate you from normal journalists and reporters? There are 4 things that'll make you different. The first thing is your experience of the world. You can't call yourself an international reporter unless you've been around and seen different places and different cultures. Seize every opportunity to visit other countries, meet people from around the world. It doesn't matter if it's business or leisure, just hop onto a plane and go everywhere. This will expand your horizons and sharpen your mind, something that, as a foreign correspondent, will help you understand better the culture of the country you'll be covering. And speaking of culture, this is a term you need to make sure you fully understand. What's culture? What makes a country's culture? Explore the culture of the country you're interested in. The music, the literature, the religion. Are there any cultural practices or conflicts you need to be aware of? Are there any tensions within the country? Why? The most important element of culture, of course, is the language. Do yourself a favour, whether you're planning to become a foreign correspondent or not. Learn a foreign language. So many of us are culpable for just sticking to just English. And while English is a very important language in the world, it would be foolish to think it's the only one. Pick a language whose sound you enjoy, a language you find interesting. Trust me, your future CV will thank you for it. And finally, history. Don't expect to be given a job as a foreign correspondent if you don't know anything about your target country's history. No piece of news is disconnected from the past. The whole world tells a story, and your coverage will suffer if you attempt to arrive in the middle with no reference to or understanding of what came before. The hows and whys always lurk in the past. Seek them. The world of international journalism is changing, like every other industry, due to the internet. The arrival of globalization brought with it a whole new set of rules, and you'll do well to comprehend what they mean for you. Unfortunately, gone are the days when a newspaper would hire you and deploy you to a country. Increasingly, newspapers around the world are beginning to favour freelance journalism, offering opportunities to local reporters with the necessary chutzpah and an understanding of the zeitgeist in their region. What this means for you is that you won't just have to start at the bottom. If you want to sustain yourself as an international reporter, you'll also have to pursue many different avenues at once. You'll need to persevere and push and build contacts everywhere. An old student of mine, a terrible student at university, but an incredibly intelligent woman, she came to find me at a conference that was recently held in Yemen, where I delivered a speech on the future of journalism. She was working for 3 different newspapers as a freelance foreign correspondent, one of them The Times, and she told me that the one piece of advice I gave her that stayed with her and helped her with her career was this: don't be afraid to fail. It will happen over and over again. It's how you deal with it that matters most. So keep this with you, this one piece of advice. Oh, and don't forget, your passports need to be kept current at all times. Thank you very much for listening.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Give it to me.